So, welcome to the podcast. Well, you might have seen the title of who we're chatting to, Pipe Major Rob Mathieson. Rob meets Rab. How are you, sir? Are you well?
I'm very well. How are you?
The best, thank you. Yeah. Now, well, first of all, I have to lead out the gate with quite a special moment in Glasgow this year. It was a huge, I don't know, the buzz around the city after this happened was just incredible. So, can you tell me, what did it feel like getting back on stage with shots after being away for so long?
I don't mind telling you it was terrifying. When Emmett first approached me with the idea, I instinctively said yes without any hesitation. At that point, the wee man inside my head was saying, "What on earth are you thinking of? You haven't played at that level for over 20 years and you don't even live in Scotland." Of course, me living full-time in the Canary Islands made it an even more interesting challenge. Emmett said in his cheeky chappy way, "It's your set, Rab. Play whatever you want. The band will learn and perform the chosen tunes at the concert." I have to say, as well as a great pipe major, he's a great delegator. That's something I wasn't very good at as a pipe major. Not only had I agreed to play, but I was tasked with putting the tunes together. I quite enjoyed selecting the montage of tunes from that era, featuring mainly my own compositions as requested. I liaised with piper Dan Nevins in terms of tune settings, breaks, transitions, etc. He was my main conduit in terms of communicating the details of tunes to the band members. A job well executed and another well-considered delegation from Pipe Major Emmett. It was agreed that we should start with the Bells of Dunblane. It was to start as an on-screen, long-distance link solo intro. The band would seamlessly pick it up on stage and join in live. I was immediately thinking, how do we get a compatible pitch, same tempo, recording versus live tonal balance, etc. Thankfully we managed to overcome the logistical issues with that. I recorded the intro in my back garden via my iPhone and laptop. It was to be the opening part of a stage backdrop and a storyboard of old photos on screen. A funny story, when I sent the first draft of the MP4 of the recording, Emmett let a few of the guys in the band hear it. Obviously he hadn't fully explained the background, as one of the younger players said, "So did he take his pipes on holiday to record this?" Reality soon dawned on me that I would be required to perform these tunes as well. Just because you compose most of them doesn't mean that you always remember the settings. You still need to practice and rehearse. Emmett did give me the option of conducting if I didn't want to play. I did consider it for a minute or two. Aye, right. There was no way I was missing the chance of playing with that group of players. The standard of players in Grade 1 nowadays is just dynamite. I knew I had to turn up with my pipes going and the fingers in fine form. I was very humbled that these young players and drummers would take the time to learn the tunes, some of which I composed 30 years ago. I started to have reservations about how the melodies would stand up against current musical trends and pipe bands. I had composed some of these tunes before many of these players were born. Initially, the thought was that we could get together at the Shotts Band Hall when I was in Scotland to develop the set leading up to the concert in August. As with all great plans, it never happened that way. Any time I was in Scotland was, of course, leading up to judging at major championships. The first major was in July at Ingliston, and the Shotts guys were on holiday and not attending that contest. I only arrived in Scotland a couple of days before the other major championships, and I knew the band would be busy getting their sound finalised and running through contest medleys and sets. Also, a new drum corps still bedding in made practice time very precious. There was no way I would want to impose in that important schedule. It became apparent that we had to trust each other to be concert ready and get our first run through in the Royal Concert Hall. I have to say the band's attention to detail displayed in the tribute set was outstanding from every player, especially when you consider that this set is probably only going to be played once and never used again in that format. It was a lot of work for the band. For me, it was a mere nostalgic indulgence, and sharing the stage with these guys turned out to be one of the highlights of my piping career. Nervous? I was beyond nervous. I was never bothered with nerves as a competitor. But when you've been away so long and only getting one run through on the day, that's a different ballgame. Oh, believe me, I was bricking it. Being surrounded by such a cracking group of players didn't help. That would normally give you the comfort, but in this case it only served to make it much more nerve-wracking. They had sent me a chanter pitch reading and I was trusted to turn up match fit, ready to rock and roll. Going on stage at the sound check to try the tribute set was great fun for me. There was an initial feel of apprehension at the sound check. As soon as we struck up, I slipped into my old pipe major mode and started checking that everyone was playing the tunes correctly. On the opposite perspective, I detected more than a few glances and one or two giving me the side eyes to check if this old codger could still deliver the goods and if the chanter was in tune. To be honest, Emmett and his two wisely chosen delegates, Pipe Sergeant Graham Drummond and Kieran Ross, produced such a clear chanter sound that it's easy to lock into tonally. No, quite the opposite. What really impressed me was the pipe section had not only learned the musical content, but had also embraced the original musical style. I knew the drum corps would be on the money, as several of the snare drummers had played in the old Shotts band at various points. We had agreed that the set would start off for me playing in Forteventura. I would appear on stage halfway through the set, making my entrance in complete darkness, with the band chanters tacit to increase the impact when I would join a performance. However, the sound check run-throughs were not in complete darkness. When the lights went out, I would have to blow my drones without sounding the chanter and negotiate a path through the pipers, but also avoid cables, lighting units, monitors, stage mixing desks, etc. I remember as the band hit Desert Storm, the self-doubt starts to creep in. I was thinking, this must be fast and slick. Then the same wee voice in my head said, yes, it must be quick, but it's going to be pitch black. What if you trip up or knock over equipment, or even worse, hit a band member? Thankfully, I made it on stage to a super crowd response, which really fueled my adrenaline. The rhythmical fluency of the pipe section to adapt to the syncopated style in the melodies and staccato type rhythmic hornpipes really blew me away. I guess that's the fruits of pipes and drums being taught in schools in parallel with other musical instruments, giving each student a much broader musical outlook that they are now bringing to the pipe band scene. Also, the RSMD producing more musical players that can adapt to any ensemble style and arrangement. I did get a very strong feeling that this young band are once again about to come of age. The current leadership and musical style are gradually distilling their musical statement, which will no doubt reach the highest musical pipe band pinnacle as their story continues. I believe a CD recording was made from the live show, well worth including in any pipe band enthusiast collection. I must thank Pipe Major Emmett Conway and the band members, plus the management team of the current Shots Ensemble, for inviting me to play on stage with them. Being a small part of that great ensemble was truly an experience I will never forget.
Honestly, what an incredible moment in time, and people are still talking about it today. Rob, are you still finding that yourself?
Yeah, it was an absolute high and a superb audience. The Glasgow concert's always like that. It's a global audience and they all love pipe bands, so you can do little wrong. I mean, the audience are always on your side.
Absolutely. And I was one of those in the crowd that was cheering their head off. It was such a good moment. I think I mentioned it to you actually at the Worlds that Bob Worrell had successfully tricked me. I thought, I didn't make it. That's a bit rubbish. No, well, we got a video. That's kind of cool. And then out you came. I was like, wow. So, very cool. Very, very cool. Well, as well as that huge moment, I do want to talk to you about something else. Quite a big topic in the piping world right now is ensemble. Now, you're quite a prolific judge in your own right, but I do want to talk and get your opinions on ensemble. Can you tell us, what is ensemble?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think over the years, ensemble has been misinterpreted and not necessarily the fault of the bands. In some cases, the judges have been misleading in many ways over the years. Ensemble is, for me, is the most important aspect of the pipe band and always has been. I mean, there's piping, drumming, etc. But for me, ensemble is king. If there's no ensemble, there's very little chance of any music. The ensemble within pipe bands is the overall effect created by the combined rhythm, melody and harmony during any performance. The musical aesthetics in terms of mood, emotion, drama, the creative effect. Does each discipline respect one another in terms of tonal balance? Spatial awareness is a big thing. Does the rhythmic support motivate the melodic motive? Does the presentation engage with the listener? And probably the concert, that was a perfect example where the delivery engaged with the listener. And the ultimate state that any performance can have is when the audience become part of the performance. And which we've seen on occasions in some competitions, despite our very sterile clinical presentation of pipe band competitions, which are not really that user-friendly from a visual perspective. But there are times that the performance engages every listener so much that they become part of the performance.
Yeah, that's one of those iconic moments that comes to mind is 2008 and the big turnout. That was like a huge moment where everyone was buzzing, but had real audience participation because you turned to face the audience, which had never really happened before. But that audience participation was a big moment at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately we haven't picked up on it. I mean, the point I was trying to make is it's time that we took all the work that the pipe bands are putting in, it's really time that we included the audience. At the minute it's a bit like watching somebody go through an examination or a test. And it's very difficult to engage with your back to the audience, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, now that we know what Ensemble is and it's the overall overarching picture of everything, what can each individual section do then to ensure good ensemble? From a piping, drumming perspective, what can they do?
Well, I think from the starting point, when a band chooses a piece of music, for example, and the pipe major selects the tune and decides, this is the tune I'm going to play. Right. What happens historically, and sometimes still does in some of the lower grade bands, the pipe major records the music and his practice chanter even before he's maybe even decided how he's going to play it or how the emotion he's going to deliver it, he's going to use to deliver it. And he'll give it to the lead drummer to write a score without any indication of the style or sometimes even indication of tempo, what the mood of the tune is. Now, we're unusual, and I don't think I've ever seen a piece of traditional pipe music where it indicates the style of the tune at the start of the music, whereas most other musicians do. If an orchestra has or a session musician goes in to learn a piece of music, to play off the cuff, they will be told the style of the tune, the tempo, the feel, the groove, in pipe bands we tend to write the score and learn the tune and then try and plot that in afterwards, which for me never really works.
So it's getting that feeling from the outset before you start getting into score writing and all of the arranging after that. Yeah.
And a lot of people think, ensemble only really applies to the grade 1 and grade 2, they're playing these big medleys, they've got variety, time signatures, there's room to develop ensemble there and communicate with the audience. But it's just as important in a grade 4A or B or grade 5 bands as they have in other areas. In some cases it's more important that they get the ensemble right. An example of that, I'm trying to think of how you could direct your band. Let's say you pick one of the map tunes. Let's say you play Mrs. MacDonald of Danach, a brilliant tune by Willie Laurie, probably the most underrated composer in history, pipe music composer, written some classic tunes. Now that tune, Mrs. MacDonald of Danach, has a lot of repeating patterns in it, like hum-da-bree, hum-da-ree, hum-da-ree. You're repeating the same thing, which can be very monotonous for a drum corps to write a score to, and difficult for them to motivate the melodic statement. And that's really what we're looking for drum corps to do. We don't want them to track the melody and play the tune on the drum. We want them to motivate the thing. Now that tune, for example, you think, what is this tune about? If you look up Willie Laurie from Argyllshire he worked in the Ballachulish slate quarry, and that tune, the folklore says, it's a good story whether it's true or not, he used to pick reeds for some of the pipers up in the slate quarry, and he would be trying chanters, and the tune was inspired by hum-da-bree, the echo around the quarry, and he liked the effect and he was trying chanters, and this tune, this little kind of motif stuck in his head, and he wrote the tune. Now the reason for that, mentioning that is if you were trying to do something with that tune, you might say, okay, on these repeating patterns, let's hear a punchy statement and an echo. There's a musical effect straight away. So you're saying to your drum corps, bum bara, hum bara, hum bari, hum bari. Get the echo effect. So put that effect into the drum score. Bring it to us. Get on the same thinking as we are to deliver that tune, and suddenly you've got a plan. You know, so you develop that tune, you write the score and say, we're going for this effect, light and shade, light and shade. Now, how do we get that effect? A lot of drum corps often think they're helping the pipe corps by, it's an accent, okay, we'll play loud. That's not always the answer. Probably the one of the RSPBA have oversold one of the concepts of Strathspey playing by saying it's strong, weak, medium, weak. Now, that is a very generic description of a Strathspey, and it's a simple way of describing it, but it's not always the case. And if the drum corps decides to play heavy, light, 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 heavy, and you've got the bass drum thumping out there, that can cause dissonance and fight against the feel of the Strathspey. If I was to say, how we're trying to create the illusion in pipe music where we create the illusion of light and shade in terms of volume, which we have no control over. The only dynamic change we can put in a pipe band is when the drums get louder or quieter. However, we use the ergogic stress to create the illusion of making it louder. But if the drum plays loud at that point, the pipes sound quieter because it's relative. So there's some times where the best way to bring the melody to the fore is for the rhythmic support to recede. I very rarely hear that, and especially in the lower grades. They'll think, "Oh, we'll help you here, thump, bang, 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 thump, bang," and that gets further exacerbated tonally. If, for example, you're playing a tune that's slightly dissonant to the bass drum might be tuned to the tonic in A, and you're playing a tune on B, if you be da-ra-rum, ba-ra, and da-lee, da-ra. So the B is the accent note. If you're thumping a low A tuned bass drum against the pipe chanter on B, that
this tone thing going on,
you're creating dissonance straight away. And the whole thing, using that metric pattern, the whole thing becomes very ploddy and laboured. And if you hear some of the top bands playing, Strathspeys are there to be manipulated rhythmically without losing the idiom. The Strathspey is all about the cut and snap, the compression on the embellishments. Triples are very diggerum. I hear bass section playing tenor drums going da da da. Now if I was to play into that, I would be right outside the idiom of Strathspeyan. If I was playing da 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 dum ba de dum da 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 dum, but I often hear tenors playing an open triplet like a 12/8 triplet rather than a Strathspey idiom.
Almost off the beat, it's stretched that far.
Yes, so it can, you have rhythmic conflict, and it can be delivered technically very precise and together with the drum corps, but it's fighting the idiom, so that they've got the wrong mood. They've got the wrong feel, they're not in the groove. And that can sometimes be delivered at the highest standard. One of the things that pipe bands find difficult to accept is if the ensemble gets a low mark and the drumming gets a very high mark and the piping gets a high mark. That's a perfect case. That's a case where something's been delivered technically very precise, tonally very precise, but there's rhythmic conflict.
Right. I see. Yeah. We have been talking about this season and others where there's big differences between drumming judges and ensemble judges. And that's the difference there then. Technically drumming wise you could be brilliant, but ensemble wise you could be really off the mark. So is that what we're talking about here? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the drumming adjudicator is analysing the technical clarity, the tonal delivery, the dynamics of the drum section. Unfortunately, a lot of it is focused on the snare line, and the describe an almost forensic analysis of the snare playing.
Yes.
And often augmented by maybe a throwaway comment about the bass section, or a generic description of what they hear from the bass section. But you can tell by the detail that they're going into with the drum section, that's the main focus, the snare line. And nowadays, snare lines, when you hear them playing dynamically, the microdynamics are brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
The microdynamics, but not the landscape dynamics. I watch drum course snare lines, especially playing a score that is quite complicated, and I watch them practice, and they'll actually spend hours deciding whether that seventh pulse has got to be pressed in or loud, or ease off and play quiet or whatever. They'll get into minute detail in the snare score. Mm-hmm. And then they'll mark out the punchy accents that they want the bass section to deliver, and the bass section duly follow that and make sure that the lead drummer can hear them and thump out these accents. They don't really go into the same detail in terms of the weighting of the tenors, and sometimes I hear tenor fills where they're playing triples or groups of four, and I can't tell whether the accents are on the first beat or the fourth beat, because they're just delivering the number of pulses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's made worse by the fact they're hitting it very hard, sometimes beyond the best tone of the drum. That is one of the faults I hear right across the grades, where I'm hearing tenor drums being hit beyond the best tonal quality.
And you get that double tone sort of thing.
Yeah, because pipe band tenor drums don't have a hard edge at the front of the beat. It's quite a soft, and then there's a decay afterwards. So when you start to play triples and, in some case, Swiss roughs they're sometimes playing, which I don't like the sound of, but it's hard to get definition and clarity on that instrument unless you hit it hard. And sometimes they're pushing beyond the band sound.
There you go. Yeah, so it does lead me into a question then about how vital are bass sections now in the overall performance. It sounds to me like they are pretty important.
They're extremely important. It can spoil the musical aesthetics. The spatial awareness between the different instruments, leaving breathing space for the music to deliver effectively is really important. Snare line dynamic precision with the bass section reinforced in accents without any dynamic care or punctuation is not good. It comes across as musically clumsy, but often played with great confidence. And the drumming judge standing behind is quite rightly saying, solid rhythmic unison punching out the accents. But when you come to the front of the band and listen to the whole thing, they're not setting themselves within the overall tonal balance of the band.
Yeah.
And we're not hearing that distinction within the dynamic range. And there's very little microdynamics that I hear in most of the bands from the bass sections. Now, the thing that is missing that the bass section can help as well is what I call landscape dynamics, where the band starts and they might be playing a punchy hornpipe, one of the kind of Gallus swing things. It's drum corps playing quite aggressive, the snare line telling you from the get-go, we are technically the best here, this is good, and a great powerhouse of dynamics coming through. And then they'll break into a slow air, and I don't hear any landscape change in dynamics. I still hear that powerhouse effect coming in from the rhythm section. They've not cottoned on to, but we've just left this aggressive hornpipe, we're now getting into a lament or a love song or something that's much more melancholy. So it can sound very clumsy, and it really conflict with the mood of the music.
See, yeah, and taking that step back, sometimes having that contrast is really important in an overall ensemble package then, I think, yeah.
Absolutely. One of the performances this year was quite interesting. The performance that kind of took the day, the winning performance from Inverary, starting with a retreat, a John McClellan retreat, was a brave decision, because that kind of goes against all the standard format of giving a performance in a competition. Normally, you want to create impact and punchiness and strong punctuation and rhythmic dynamics as you enter the arena. They chose to. It was much more like a ballad, but I was very pleased to hear the drum corps play in some areas quite a simplified accompaniment. They punctuated the tune well, and they let the melody breathe, which was the strong aspect of that tune. I mean, John McClelland's tunes are so melodic. The tune Lock Inside, for example, is probably the best 3/4 ever written. The guy had just a fantastic potential to write tunes they had an earworm in them. The melody's so strong, that's why they've lasted so long. So the drum corps, you could tell that they let this tune breathe. We'll give it some rhythmic accompaniment and motivate it a little bit, but we're not playing the whole tune. There was plenty of breathing space here to let the tune present itself, let the melody.
Yeah, we've spoke about that on the radio many times, about how the music just sings with that set, because Stephen and the guys, you can hear it. They take that step back and allow Stuart and the pipe corps to really carry it at times. And that's made a lot of people think now about Ensemble and having that contrast in their sets. Yeah.
Yeah, you really have to have your drum corps in the same train of thought as the music and the pipe section. I mean, the drum corps, if you take a standard 2/4 march, for example, what has happened a lot of times over the years, the first part establishes the melodic theme, the motif, etc., right? The second part gives a top hand variation. The third part comes in with, in piping, a far more embroidered version of the first part, with note variations and a lot more embellishments to embroider the thing. So it gets quite busy there. And then the last part resolves going up to the top hand, and it's usually it's connected to the second, melodically connected to the second part, and it might resolve musically with a second timing. Now, if you run a drum score parallel to that and say, okay, we'll play the first part, here's the rudiments going in, here's the second part, third part, okay, same theme, we'll add in more embellishments and get a bit more tricky here. Now they're running parallel to the pipe music there, and you have to think, hold on a second, the pipe music gets quite busy in the third part. There's lots of embellishments going on, lots of finger dexterity, strong execution required. You need to get compression on the embellishments if it's a 2/4. The last thing it needs is a whole other language of rhythmical embellishments layered over the top of that. That just clouds the issue. And then if you add in 7 voiced tenor drums punching out various bits, the whole thing can become a bit blurred, and you think that's not allowing the melodic intricacies to come through. So maybe there's an argument for saying the third part, let's ease back on the embellishments, let them come through, and we'll embroider a bit more rhythmically in the last part. But we need to get away from this running parallel to the tune, what we call tracking the tune, whereas a lot of drum corps are playing the tune on the drum. They're virtually starting off with a score that's a more complicated version of the monotone of the tune, and then adding in all their embellishments to it. That, for me, doesn't motivate the melody, it just tracks the melody. It's almost like if you go into a pub session and there's 10 fiddlers and a piper and a couple of accordions and they're all playing the tune. That's a jam session, There's no delivery there, in terms of ensemble. And we need to think about that, think about the whole thing, rather than think, okay, third part, let's step it up here with the embellishments, just as the pipers are doing it.
Yeah, I have listened to quite a number of drum corps over the years, and you can pick out the tunes they're playing, even when the pipe corps over the hill tuning up somewhere. You can absolutely hear the tune. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's almost like you don't need the pipes here.
Yeah,
there's no space for the melody.
Yeah, you can absolutely hear it, and they're playing. Yeah. So I have an interesting question, this one. Obviously, people would know you as being one of the most iconic Grade 1 pipe majors. Hope you don't mind me blowing your head up here. But with your experience of being a pipe major at the top flight, Does that influence your approach to judging ensemble? You know, having been in the circle, having that experience, does that help?
In some ways, it does because your listening skills are high. You know, they're at their peak if you've been a top pipe major. However, yeah, it's the transition from pipe major to adjudicator is sometimes not an easy one for some people.
Mm.
If you spent 40 years in a band hall, when the pipe section strikes up, you immediately, if you can hear a D or an F, you stalk the circle, you find it, and sort it. You know, you have to stop yourself doing that when you're judging. You get to pipe major mode and you hear, oh, there's something not right, and you start whizzing around the circle to find it.
And trying to look for it. Yeah.
And really the job of the adjudicator is just to identify it. If you happen to see what it is, that's all well and good, and you can mention that on the sheet. But you have to stop yourself going and identifying it and almost trying to fix it. You know,
Yeah.
you've almost got to say, okay, I can hear that tonal issue with the chanter. Write it down, and then start listening to the music. Now we go through. I think pipe band people should take lessons in how to listen to music, because we analyse music and audit it if it's a pipe band playing all through our career.
Yeah.
We almost lose the ability to assess a thing musically.
Yeah.
You know, and you can hear, you sometimes see it in concerts, for example, where you've got the people who are there just looking to enjoy the music, and they're getting right into it. And saying, oh, this is a great night, you know, the band's got the swing, I'm enjoying this, and the music's seducing me, you know. And you've got the guy 2 seats up from him who's a grade 1 pipe major saying, can you hear the D's are all right, yeah? You know, and you think, whoa, whoa. So that transition from being a pipe major where you're constantly analysing and sorting the setup of the band and changing stuff, you have to. The transition is not easy for everybody. It's interesting because we've got Richard Parks is coming on to the panel this year as a championship adjudicator, and when we do the practical experiences and go through the sheets, you soon he's realising very quickly, oh, this is a different game, you know. I remember personally when I started judging, after judging 5 years, I thought, you know what, I'd like to be a pipe major, and I think I know more about it. You know, I think all pipe majors should maybe have to go and judge a contest and hear the whole thing. And when I first went into judging, or when I was an attached adjudicator, I would often hear performances and say, wow, we do that, that's not good, I need to address that. I wasn't aware of it in the band hall, but I see it in the contest presentation, so it's a great learning curve as well. And you become an even greater expert after you've been judged. You know what's wrong with every band. Then you realise, why could I not sort it when I was pipe major, you know?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, learning how to listen to music. You know, it's been something we've spoke about on the show before. Like, I've been at plenty of concerts now, and at the end of them, I'm blown away. I think I've just had the best night. But then, as you say, people come to me, oh, Rob, did you hear the drones wandering there towards the end of the night? Oh, I'm like, come on. They've been on stage for 2 hours playing. What do you expect? Yeah.
And as adjudicators, when we're training adjudicators, the modern, I mean, I'm very involved in the training now, and we're trying to move away from judging instruments in isolation. Judging the piping and so that was technically brilliant and the tone was great, you know, and you think, yeah, but you know, the interpretation wasn't good. The Strathspey wasn't delivered in the correct idiom, and it was together, it was totally nice, but they could have got a bit more lift, or they could have got a bit more expression. I think one of the best things that's happened at grade 1 is moving to the 4-part marches. That's been a big success. The reason for that is the big 6-party marches are very much metrically driven. You know, it's rhythmical pulsation all the way through, and it's drive, melodic drive.
Yes.
You know, and it's about the metric punch as it moves forward. And whereas the 4-part marches are much more expressive. So there's, to me, it's less critical to have exact metric tempo when it's an expressive tune. There has to be a little bit of poetic license. If you hear the top solo players, for example, you'll hear tempo moderation where at the end of the part they'll have a very, very slight ral and then move into the next part. It's a very, very subtle technique, but it delivers the music in a much more creative way. And it requires a lot more, a deeper understanding of the shape of the musical phrase and how to make the music talk.
Yeah.
Now, and I think the top bands that are playing these more expressive type 2/4s are starting to get it. Now, some of the drum corps are struggling with it because they want for metric delivery and going for unison, and the easiest way to get unison is to play in metric time and play loud.
Yeah.
You start playing very, very light in snare drums, you often find that the unison begins to separate a little bit. But they're starting to get it now. And I think maybe the next stage, and I'm just throwing this out there as I speak, maybe the solo drumming should start to move towards expressive marches rather than 6-part metric times, because it would take the rhythmic interpretation down a different route where they need to be expressive and understand the music.
Rather than being on a metronomic, here's your beats in the bar, you must stick to that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's like a metronomic rhythmical exercise showcasing technical display.
Yes.
And definition and clarity. And when you're talking about the bass sections, that's the one thing that I think as an association and the music board maybe need to look at it. We've allowed to go a bit wild. I mean, when you go to the solo drumming, I see adjudicators making a solo drummer before he starts just come forward a couple of inches there on the X, you know.
Yeah.
You think, all right, that must be very important to the judge as a listener. But when we go onto the pipe band scene, they stand behind the drum corps 90% of the time, and they allow bass sections, the association allow the bass sections to stand any way they like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not taking that detailed care in the listening process for the bass sections, because we're saying you can face the drum corps, you can face the pipe corps, you can have 3 of you can have 7 of you, 8, you know, and they're static, and it's very difficult from an ensemble point of view if you hear 8 tenor drummers with the back to the crown of the band, and then the next band comes on and they're facing the front. You need to go around and move around the band to hear what's going on there to try and get a fair comparison. And I think maybe it's time pipe bands understood or defined our best playing positions for the listeners. I mean, if you just go to an orchestra layout, you know exactly where the string section is going to be. You know where the woodwind section is. You know where the percussion is. That's in tablets of stone. So to give the best presentation and engage with the audience, I think we should probably have a look at that. The big thing from the bass section now is visual dynamics, as they call it, flourishing and old money. But their actual overall visual dynamic is one of deceit in terms of the listener, because if I'm listening to a bass section, there's 7 of them, and they've tuned to the different notes of the chanter, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. When I'm looking at them and there's only one drum playing, but see the 7 of them coming down as if they're all playing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it switches to another voice, and I'm thinking, imagine if the pipe corps done that. Imagine if we had a solo spot. Say that guy on the left's going to play the first part solo, and the guy on the right hand side will play the second part, then the band will come in. However, when they're playing, every piper will have their pipes under their arm, pretending they're playing and fingering the thing.
I mean, yeah.
Right. And that would be saying, "Oh, what you do? We don't do that." Or the snare line, the leading tips playing on the chips are going to be, we'll come in, but we'll just play fresh air. The rest of the corps as if we're all playing. that visual deceit we're allowing to happen in the bass section. So I think there should be almost a language of, for example, what is tacit when they're not playing. rather than pretending they're doing the same as the guy that's playing. I mean, bass sections now are generally tuned up, and if they're tuned to harmonically with the chanters, you could put them in two pods based on the arpeggios of the pipe chanter. You know, you have one group A, C, E, high A, another group on the dark notes. You could have them in two different positions, and visually, when you're playing a tune in a key of E, that section could, for example, be playing and the other section flourishing, and it could change. So you're feeding the listener visually what's happening here musically.
So what you're seeing matches your ear, kind of thing.
Well, almost like if you think back to the big band sounds, the big Ted Heath bands and all, when the trombones would stand up and actually play their bit and sit down, and the soloists would stand up. There was a visual feed there, which helps engage the listener, which is the most important thing.
That's interesting. And who knows? Bands might consider that going forward. You never know. Yeah.
Well, I've actually, there's a little montage of some of the stuff we're doing on the training. It's now online, and for Ensemble, when I say online, the candidates sit the weekend workshop online, and we have a lot of modules and videos, etc. We are trying to get it right and get everybody up to speed. The one thing that came across when we played these video modules to the candidates, the first thing they all said is, we need to get this out to the bands.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, Ensemble historically has been a thing that was, I mean, in my day, it was a thing you started to talk about when you retired and you were wanting to be a judge. We never actually discussed it during your playing days very much anyway. It's less nowadays because we're a far more educated population of young players, musically educated, and they get it, and I can hear that coming through. It's something I think we do need to roll out to the bands and say it's more than just nice embellishments and blow and steady.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot more to it. So I think we have a short trailer of that, actually, of what's provided to the adjudicators as part of the training. Now, this is just a short snippet of what is available. So we'll just edit that in at this point now. Yeah, let's get a listen to this.
Let us try and define what we should be evaluating in ensemble adjudication. When we judge piping and drumming, we tend to mainly focus on the traditional indicators used on us when we were taught to the age-old working model of master-apprentice, using a relatively symptomatic approach to record technical and tonal deficiencies.
An overall harmonious effect between pipes.
The ensemble approach that the RSPBA is currently adopting and promoting is an overall holistic perspective on the musical presentation and total band sound. For example, analyse the intended effect in the opening tune. Is it stately? Is it majestic? Is it a traditional 2/4 Argyllshire swing? There is a tacit assumption that we, as the expert evaluator or assessor, have the required experiential profile to deliver an informative. Does the performance recognise and present a variety of mood and style? Are all sections delivering in that mood? The overall musicality is not simply the sum of the individual parts or elements. Higher and more technically skilled playing level will not automatically translate to an improved ensemble.
Competition marches are true bagpipe music and a product of the piper's art, which require considerable fingering dexterity. Above all, study of the tune's proper melody is most essential to reveal the lights and shades, which puts the artist above the technician, who often leaves the listener unsatisfied because of lack of musical taste.
There you go. So that was just a little flavour of what our adjudicators have received. But I think that would be really valuable for bands. Rob, I think I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time we started talking about the music to the players, and a bit more of communication between adjudicators and bands would be healthy. We're always conscious of the fact that if you're helping bands or teaching or whatever, you need to keep a professional distance.
Yes.
But I think there is a necessity for information to be exchanged. Well, when we judge bands, especially in the lower grades, you've got a minute and a half to write an assessment of the band, and it's very easy to lapse into an audit style communication and just write chanters out here, drones wavering, mistake in third part, and it's like a report card. But you're not really offering the band any direction. And I get it. It's very hard to do that in a minute and a half, and then you go back to your seat and you have 30 seconds, and the next band's up to the line. But sometimes the audit style analysis can mislead the band. I mean, I hear bands talking, they'll say, oh yeah, we were quite good, we got a fifth or a sixth, and we're hoping to move up in that next year, so we're going to get a new set of drums and we're getting a new set of chanters, you know. And I'm listening thinking, that's not going to solve the issues, guys.
It's a new instrument, it's not a new approach.
But I can understand why they've been driven that way, because
Yeah.
the two piping judges and the piping based ensemble judges mentioned notational issues. Yeah, but he's mentioned that to every band in your grade. He's just making a note of it. What he's not had time to tell you is your expression and your drive in the march. The embellishments need more compression, you know. That's where you're going to move from fifth to first. But we've not got time in that situation to write all these things. And I think the bands think the answer is, you know, better tone, trending, follow the leaders, what are they playing, we'll play that. And they become frustrated. And unfortunately, musicians and pipe bands, when they get frustrated, the main target is their judges.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, well, that's it. It's been a topic on our show for a while now. Yeah, for sure. But if anything, I do believe that you guys have one of the toughest jobs in the planet. I don't know how you guys do it, so you have my full respect from that regard, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, at the Worlds this year, there was, I think we judged 3,200 performances.
Oh, word. That's insane.
I mean, that's in terms of the number of critique sheets.
Yeah, I was going to say the amount of paperwork that's handed in all at one moment.
And written up, and you're trying to be creative and not repeat yourself, but
that's difficult. Yeah. The amount of bands, the amount of sheets, the amount of paperwork and admin that's involved, it's very, I don't know, full on for sure. And right, I need to get, well, this is quite a big question, okay? And it's one that's really difficult to answer. Someone's asked me this once and I couldn't answer it. Has there been any one sort of standout performance for you, ensemble-wise, that you've heard and you've thought, that was great? That was great ensemble right there. Is there any one performance like that?
There's been many spots in medleys that you think, wow, that's really, really effective. That touched me, that pulled me in, you know. I remember once, it was Jim Kilpatrick was telling me this. It was one of the years that the band had won the Worlds. I think it might be 2003, and they were at a workshop afterwards over in the States, and they were playing in the evening excerpts from the Worlds and winning medleys. And Jack Lee was there actually, and the band, we had in their medley from memory a transition from a slow air, an Irish slow air, into Alistair's Big Reel, and it was an effect that we had put into it. And Jack stopped the recording and says, that right there is when Shots won the Worlds. Right there.
Wow. Just with that one transition, yeah.
You know, but what he was trying to say is that was the seductive point, right? That's when you got the votes. And I think there was an element of that this year where emotion delivered and the choral effect and the tonal precision that Inverary delivered trumped everything else. And one of the things we do in the training, when we start away, we ask each candidate to put in order of priority 5 elements from a performance in order of importance. And the elements are from memory. It's something like tonal production would be one, expression and interpretation, right? Emotion and drama, technical precision and unison. And you say put them in order. Now, you get some people, if they're fresh out of the ranks of, if they've had 30 years and they're the tone guy set enchanters, they'll put tonal production is my first priority. All right, okay. But a lot of the clever ones will say, musical interpretation. Right? But then we start to analyse the sheets and say, okay, go through your sheets there and highlight every sentence where you talk about musical interpretation. And there's very little. And you say, hold on a second, you just told me that was the most important element, and you're not really talking about it much. Now that's a Celtic thing. We don't like to talk about arty things, you know. We steer away from that. We're much more comfortable mentioning issues of musical performance that can be measured. Yes. You know, the accuracy of the chanter, the chanter intervals, the unison, tonal unison, the balance of the drones being steady, you know, the impact of the attack, you know, the E being flat line and perfectly in tune, full tonal production. Now, we're much more comfortable talking because we can justify it, it's measurable. But when it becomes a bit more subjective and more of the art side, and let's be honest, piping and pipe bands is an art form. We sometimes forget that and it's treated more like a sport. That's the part that's most important. Now, I would always say emotion will trump everything. And one of the things we do in the course, or we had it in a module, was, and forgive me here, I'm going to mention Liverpool Stadium here. George Martin, the manager of the Beatles, shows you an illustration where the crowd sing You'll Never Walk Alone. Right. And he said, we all have moments where you attend something and you think, oh, that was brilliant, or the hair in the back of my neck went right up. And you say, oh, did you like that? Oh, it was just musically, it was so moving. And you say, but hold on a minute, the tone was terrible, the unison was awful. You know, it was out of time. How come it was so good? You know, because there's something in our responses of emotion that will trump every other one. You'll be much more forgiving if you get an emotional piece of music. And by emotion, it doesn't need to be sad. You know, it can just when the band get it right and whatever emotion they're trying to convey. Now, one of the things we do, and I'll show you a little excerpt from that, how we discuss emotion and points and medleys, ensemble that stick in my head, in some cases, for decades. 78th Frasers in 87 when they come on with the Mason's Apron. Now, you might think, oh, that was just clever and great playing. But it was the emotional mood that, for me, made it very, very strong. I'll show you this on this PowerPoint that we, just in a little extract when we talk about it, if we could just go over to that. It's very difficult to choose an example that epitomises great ensemble in one single performance. There are often certain focal points in many great performances that display good ensemble. This is another extract from some of our recently updated training modules for adjudicators, showing examples from mainstream music and pipe bands. The focus topic in this one is on musical mood, theme and emotion. It compares emotive examples from mainstream music and standout pipe band ensemble moments that triggered listener engagement for me. The emotive strength in any musical presentation cannot be ignored. When listening or adjudicating, especially at top level, you will occasionally experience a performance that reaches out to you and personally connects with your emotions. My understanding is that it triggers the release of a dopamine in your body, a neurotransmitter that triggers a rewarding sensation in your brain, which will leave you wanting more. The most extreme emotions would be joy and sadness. The Highland bagpipe has a strong affinity with the expression of sadness. No one can express these emotions better than the Celts. It's a strong part of our DNA. It is believed that the subjective experience of music can be mapped out in a defined number of emotive feelings and responses. You can see them identified on this slide. In pipe bands, we can label clear emotive projections from standout performances. Let's look at strong examples from mainstream music first. Recognise and feel the stirring of great emotional pride when listening to the Star Spangled Banner, for example. Or the seductive power of eroticism from George Michael's Careless Whisper. The simple rhythmic presentations of Ed Sheeran's The Shape of You is said to spark joy. We can hear similar emotional connections from ensemble-driven pipe band performances. The jaunty, rhythmical interpretation of Ducking and Diving from Field Marshal Montgomery, which triggered a whole trend of what we might call jolly hornpipes. The style of defiance from SFU's Cosmos Cascade. The vintage classic from Diza and Donald's rendition of My Lagan Love. Even after several decades as a piper, I can still sing the drum score. It added so much tension and drama to the music. It reminded me of the movie score from the movie Where Eagles Dare. Just to show you that I'm not fantasising, here's a little taste that displays the emotive similarities. When I seen the word eroticism as an emotive musical style, I thought, have I ever heard a pipe band deliver in sexy mode? Well, if you listen to the 78th Frasers in 1987, it's definitely the slow, sassy, rhythmic swing and sultry approach to the melodic style that engages the audience. For me, these performances are examples of great ensemble within pipe bands. They have that X factor that can often capture the winning vote. In pipe bands, when the melody is delivered from the pipe section with rich tone and just the right amount of harmonies, it conveys and engages a very strong emotional mood to the listener. If the drum section is rhythmically sympathetic to the mood, it can add drama and tension to further enhance it by adding that X factor ingredient. If the drum section is rhythmically sympathetic to the mood, it can add drama and tension to further enhance the performance. However, if the drum scores don't pick up the mood and expressive feel of the piece, we can have rhythmic conflict, spoiling the overall ensemble effect. Irrespective of how technically precise and in unison with rich tone the percussion section is. Since it's not far from Christmas time, I thought I might show you a funny illustration which shows the consequences of getting the mood wrong in an ensemble presentation. It's Robbie Williams with a backing choir. When you watch this, think of the choir as being the pipe band drum section. For me, this is a funny but extreme illustration of how some pipe band drum corps support slow airs or 3/4s and 4/4s and get the mood totally wrong.
Hey, on the good, you like that?
Yeah, they're ace, aren't they?
You carry on, mate.
Anything you sing, they'll follow. Anything you sing.
Okay, let me gather myself. There we go. Okay. To 3.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
What's it white, not red, not green? Whitest Christmas he's ever seen.
Just like the ones I used to know.
Used to know. Wop, wop, boo, wop. We used to know of white. That's right, they were white, white.
Carry on, Rob. We'll follow.
All right then.
Where the treetops glisten and children listen.
Say listen.
Do you know what? Yeah, I can hear it now. And I'll just be picturing sometimes, drum corps, pipe corps, one of them being that choir in the background.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that ensemble is that strange X factor that never really gets spoke about in the band halls, but I do think that trend is now changing, Rob. I think a lot more bands are now looking at this as being the element that will potentially win them prizes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't think we talk about it enough. Analyse, why did we win that? Sometimes even the winners don't quite nail why they won the contest. Sometimes they come away thinking we won it because we had the best chanter sound and the best play. And it's like, no. It was more than that. You had one of the best chanter sounds and one of the best level of execution, etc. But it was that X factor, that performance ingredient that got you the prize. Now, it's very hard sometimes to analyse it as an adjudicator in a spot in that short window to say why I'm putting you first. But that's the band that you want to have first. Sometimes the opposite. Sometimes you're judging a band, you think, this is not really doing it for me, but I'm struggling to explain why it's not really doing it. I would need to hear it a couple of times. That's the dilemma of adjudication. And I think Ensemble is a bit less judging with your head and more judging with your heart.
It's a guttural thing, isn't it? That's what I'm getting here. It's needing the music to move you in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you unwrap it, when you unwrap what makes good ensemble, there are factors that are tangible and you can say that's the element that just grabbed the audience. You hear it in some of these talent shows where people like Simon Cowell, etc., will say to a great performer, they'll say, that was excellent, it got a little bit pitchy at one point, but you know what, it didn't matter because you delivered the emotion so well.
There you go.
Well, I think this has been such a valuable conversation. Thank you so much for spending time with us on the show this week. And the door's always open. I'm sure we're going to get a raft of additional questions following this week's show. But I think for everyone who's right now working in band halls and looking forward to the new year and getting ready for the new season, do consider your ensemble of your performance, not just the getting every grace note in Dublin and Flam 5, correct? there is an other element to consider here, Rob, isn't there?
Absolutely, and maybe we need to field the questions and give back some guidance and say, look, this is why your band is stuck in the ladder at this rung. You need to address this issue, which maybe is not being mentioned on the critique sheet because it's more subjective and it's more on the overall ensemble thing. I actually think all adjudicators should have to do the ensemble course, because I think you become a better adjudicator in your own discipline once you submerge yourself in the ensemble and you listen from that point of view. You start to think, well, especially when you're trying to split two great performances.
There you go. That's tricky.
And you say, I'd like to hear it again, and I'd like to hear it again and maybe listen musically this time than analytically. It's
a
not an
different
easy
approach.
job.
Yeah,
It's
it's definitely not an easy job, for sure. Yeah. So, Rob, if it's okay with you, would you be open if people were to send us in questions to the Rob Show and we were to kind of gather them together? Would you be up for possibly providing a few answers? Would that be?
Absolutely. Let's kick the ball. Let's get it rolling, especially in the lower grades. I feel that's the area that's often missed, and sometimes they're doing things that I hear a band and I think, I could help you make this better, and it doesn't require that much more practice or that much more talent, because, for example, you're playing three tunes in the same key, you're losing the harmonic change when you play a tune in D and a tune in A, and simple things like that. Or you're starting off with a tune in a minor key, which is showcasing every dodgy note in the chanter. Start off with your third tune in the key of A until the guys get settled and the nerves settled. Simple things like that, which create a better musical presentation, and it gives you some structure and reasoning as to why you've put it together that way, and you're actually highlighting the strengths of the band, not showcasing the weaknesses.
Oh, fantastic. So, folks, if you've enjoyed this week's episode, please do email us in your questions if you do have them. So, bigrabshow@gmail.com. That address again, bigrabshow@gmail.com. And Rob, thank you so much for joining us on the show and taking your time to explain this weird X factor that is Ensemble. And hopefully we'll be welcoming you back to a future episode. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So Big Rab saying cheerio to Big Rab.
Aye.